welcome to the debate. Right now, you are likely listening to us in English, streamed directly through a smartphone in your pocket.
Which is honestly a pretty wild reality when you actually stop to think about it.
It really is. I mean, those two tools, the smartphone and the English language, have essentially eradicated geographical borders. We are looking at a communicative landscape profoundly transformed by the ubiquitous spread of mobile technology and, the undeniable global dominance of English.
Right. But the core tension we need to untangle today is what this frictionless world is actually doing to us.
Exactly. Does this globalization of communication represent a net positive expansion of human capability, or are we quietly trapping ourselves, and particularly our youth, in the most sophisticated, addictive, cognitive cage humanity has ever built?
Yeah, and you know where I stand on this.
I do. But look, I look at this landscape and I see unparalleled empowerment. Mobile technology and a universal lingua franca are fundamentally breaking down historical barriers. I mean, they are allowing us to drive global progress at a scale that was just previously unimaginable.
See, we're celebrating the removal of physical borders while completely ignoring the psychological walls we are building inside our own heads.
Oh, come on. Psychological walls?
Yes, absolutely. The reality of this hyper-connected era is that it masks severe structural decay. We are seeing a crippling digital addiction taking hold in younger generations. It is a devastating erosion of deep cognitive engagement.
I think that's a bit alarmist, don't you?
Not at all. It's the normalization of highly deceptive, high-risk online ecosystems. The supposed progress of instant communication is actually degrading the fundamental quality of how humans relate to one another.
Well, I want to challenge that concept of decay immediately. Let's look at why mobile phones spread so rapidly in the first place. I mean, this wasn't just some clever marketing trick by tech companies.
It was definitely heavily marketed, though.
Sure, but the adoption of mobile technology satisfies what is functionally a primal psychological drive. It is the meaningful approach, the inherent human necessity to map the unknown, right? To bridge distances and to connect with people and ideas outside of our immediate physical vicinity.
Okay, yes, curiosity is a primal drive. I'll give you that.
Right, and for centuries, that drive required crossing oceans or building vast physical infrastructure. Now, we carry that infrastructure in our pockets. We didn't just adopt smartphones because they are convenient.
Then why did we?
Because they are the ultimate extension of our evolutionary desire to understand the world. They are vital lifelines. We navigate physical space with them, we solve immediate logistical problems, and we ensure our physical safety through instant access to emergency networks.
But you're conflating the initial intention of the tool with its current design and outcome.
How so? To frame this monumental leap in human capabilities simply as an addiction is to profoundly misunderstand why we value these tools.
I'm not misunderstanding it. I'm looking at the reality. Yes, curiosity is human, but the mechanism of delivery has been completely hijacked. We are not just carrying navigation tools and emergency lifelines anymore. We are carrying cognitive fast food.
Cognitive fast food, that's a catchy phrase, but it ignores the utility.
It accurately describes the utility. The design of these modern platforms is entirely predicated on keeping the user trapped in a loop of rapid, superficial stimulation. Look at the data on how youth interact with these devices.
They use them to learn, to socialize.
They are not using them as lifelines. The overwhelming majority of their screen time is spent surfing, scrolling, and consuming highly fragmented media. This is an addiction by every clinical metric.
Even if we acknowledge that the design of certain applications leverages our reward systems, we have to look at the cognitive adaptation happening here.
You call it adaptation, I call it exploitation. We've essentially engineered an environment that exploits the very curiosity you are praising. It turns a drive for meaningful connection into a compulsive need for the next algorithmic dopamine hit.
Look, let's look at the shift away from traditional media. There is this persistent, almost archaic anxiety that young people are spending vastly more time on screens than reading books.
Because they are, and that matters.
But consider the environment they are preparing to inhabit. The internet is an infinitely updating storehouse of global knowledge. In a world where data points are shifting by the second across political, social, and scientific fields,
The ability to rapidly search, synthesize, and filter keywords across dozens of sources is a highly relevant cognitive strategy.
Information foraging is not the same thing as knowledge synthesis.
It is the first step of it. Reading a linear printed book may feel intellectually superior to an older generation, but rapid context switching and information foraging are the actual survival skills of the 21st century.
You are equating the speed of data retrieval with the depth of understanding. And neurobiologically, those are entirely different mechanisms.
I'm not saying they are the exact same, but
They are treated as the same. When you sit down and read a long-form book, you are engaging the brain's deep reading network. You are forced to hold a complex narrative structure in your working memory, right? To practice sustained focus, to exercise intellectual patience.
sure, reading has benefits. No one is denying that.
That process literally builds neural pathways that support critical thinking and empathy. When you scroll through a feed, constantly task switching every 15 seconds, you are training your brain for exactly the opposite.
You're assuming all screen time is just mindless scrolling, which just isn't true.
A vast majority of it is. You are pruning those deep focus pathways in favor of a constant state of hyper-arousal and fragmented attention. You can retrieve a fact quickly, sure, but you lose the cognitive architecture required to understand what that fact actually means in a broader context.
But that assumes the broader context can only be built slowly in isolation. The digital environment allows for collaborative context building.
Collaborative how? Through a comment section?
Yes, among other things. When someone is navigating these platforms, they are not just passively absorbing worthless information. They are interacting with a global network of peers. This brings us directly to the role of language skills and interpersonal communication in this modern framework.
Ah, the great global sociology experiment.
Exactly. It is a massive sociology experiment where we have the unprecedented ability to build cross-cultural empathy. I can connect with a researcher in Tokyo or an artist in Sao Paulo instantly. That is the actual realization of the meaningful approach. The network allows us to form bonds that physical geography previously made impossible.
Okay, let's talk about the reality of those digital bonds. Because the sociology experiment you are describing has a very dark control group.
Here we go.
When you remove physical presence from communication, you don't just erase geography, you erase the foundational cues of human trust. We are dealing with the online disinhibition effect.
People can be mean online. Yes, that's well documented.
It's more than just being mean. When people interact behind a screen entirely divorced from the physical consequences of their actions, their morality often shifts. The internet is a breeding ground for what are functionally digital ghosts.
Digital ghosts.
Yes, people operating under completely fabricated identities. You talk about connecting with an artist in Sao Paulo, but the reality is that engaging in online relationships is rolling the dice with your own psychological safety.
Look, deception didn't start with the internet. Bad actors exist in every human system. Whether it's a village square or a digital forum, you have to be careful.
It didn't start with the internet, but the internet eliminated the friction of deception. The scale, and frankly the zero-cost nature of digital fabrication are completely unprecedented.
It also eliminated the friction of finding genuine people.
But at what risk? You can steal a photo, invent a persona, and infiltrate someone's life in a matter of minutes. The data on cybercrime and relational fraud is staggering.
I'm not denying the existence of scams, but
We are seeing relationships form, emotional investments deepen, and lives utterly derailed because someone was communicating with a phantom. It goes way beyond financial scams. It penetrates the most intimate layers of society. It destroys marriages, isolates vulnerable youth, and replaces the multidimensional reality of physical human bonding with this precarious, highly curated artificiality.
you're focusing on the extreme failure modes of the network.
I'm focusing on the systemic risks. You cannot build a resilient global society on a foundation where the basic identity of the person you are talking to is constantly in question. But you're ignoring the billions of successful, authentic nodes. Yes, the lack of physical cues requires a new type of digital literacy. We have to learn to verify, to be skeptical, and to protect ourselves. So we just accept a low-trust baseline. We adapt to it, because the underlying infrastructure of this communication is overwhelmingly utilized for cooperation. And to facilitate that global cooperation, to make this vast digital infrastructure actually function, we require a standardized protocol.
Let me guess, you're talking about English.
I am. We need a way for all these diverse nodes to talk to each other without constant translation friction. This is why the expanding dominance of the English language is not just some cultural trend. It is a structural necessity of the modern era.
A structural necessity that just happens to heavily favor the economic and cultural centers that already hold the most power. How convenient.
It favors efficiency. English has achieved its status largely through historical adaptability and its current network effects.
Network effects, like a tech platform.
Exactly like that. Think of Metcalfe's law. The value of a network increases exponentially with the number of users connected to it. The same applies to language. As more multinational businesses, scientific communities, and software platforms adopt English, the utility of learning English skyrockets for everyone else.
So it becomes a monopoly.
It becomes the standard operating system of global commerce and data. In engineering, in medicine, in international politics, having a shared operating system means we don't lose vital information in translation.
Calling a human language a standard operating system reveals exactly the utilitarian blind spot in this entire worldview.
How is it a blind spot to want researchers to be able to share data instantly? If we are trying to solve global crises like climate issues, pandemics, economic instability, we cannot afford the lag time of running every piece of research through a linguistic bottleneck. English provides a cognitive infrastructure for humanity to operate as a cohesive unit.
Language is not just a neutral conduit for transmitting data. It is a framework for thought. It carries the nuance, the history, and the unique cognitive architecture of a culture.
No one is saying it doesn't.
But you are treating it like code. This relates to linguistic relativity, the idea that the structure of a language influences how its speakers conceptualize the world. When you force the entire globe to conduct its highest levels of science, business, and political problem-solving exclusively in English, you are not just standardizing communication.
I would argue we are.
No, you are homogenizing human thought. You are enforcing an Anglo-centric way of framing problems and solutions.
Hold on, though. No one is enforcing monolingualism. A shared secondary language does not overwrite a primary one. We are simply adding a universal layer on top of local nuance.
That is a very idealized way of looking at it.
It's the practical way. A scientist in Germany doesn't stop conceptualizing the world in German just because she publishes her findings in English. She uses English to ensure that a researcher in Kenya can actually read her findings and build upon them.
But that assumes the two layers of language exist in perfect, equal harmony, which completely ignores the economic realities.
The primary role of language skills in this context is purely functional. It opens an ocean of career opportunities for the individual, and it pools our collective intelligence for the species. The growing dominance of English is driven by the very real, practical desire of individuals to participate in the global economy.
But when the ocean of career opportunities, the funding for research, and the global prestige are all gatekept by English proficiency, native languages are inevitably relegated to the domestic, informal sphere.
They don't disappear.
They lose their intellectual prestige. Entire vocabularies for science and technology are simply never developed in local languages because it is more economically efficient to just use English. This is a subtle but profound cultural cannibalism.
Cultural cannibalism? That's quite a leap.
We trade the rich, diverse linguistic heritage of the globe just to appease the frictionless networking demands of multinational corporations.
Let's be real here. I think it's highly cynical to frame the desire for economic mobility and global participation as merely appeasing multinational corporations.
I'm just looking at who benefits the most.
The individual benefits. If a young person in a developing nation learns English and uses their smartphone to access educational materials they would never have in their local library, they are empowering themselves. They are breaking out of the geographic destiny that would have confined their ancestors.
In theory, sure.
In practice, the combination of mobile internet and English proficiency is the greatest democratizing force for education and opportunity in human history.
It decentralizes access to knowledge.
It decentralizes access, but it centralizes control. Look at what they are actually accessing.
Educational materials, coding courses, global news.
We have to circle back to the reality of the screen here. You speak of this hypothetical student accessing deep educational materials, but the data clearly shows that the mechanisms of digital addiction override these noble intentions.
For some, maybe, but not all.
For the vast majority, the platforms they use to learn English or access this global network are the exact same platforms engineered to keep them scrolling endlessly through worthless, algorithmically generated content. The device doesn't care if you are reading a physics paper or watching a highly deceptive influencer. It only cares about time on screen.
So we teach them better habits. We don't throw away the tool.
When we build our entire educational and economic future on devices that inherently fracture attention, the ultimate cost is a generation that possesses the entire world's knowledge in their hands, yet lacks the cognitive focus to actually use it.
You are arguing that the medium is inherently corrupting the user. But humans have historically adapted to every major shift in information technology.
Here comes the printing press argument.
Well, it's true. We panicked about the printing press democratizing information and disrupting authority. We panicked about the television destroying civic engagement. Now we are panicking about the smartphone and digital networking.
Those are false equivalencies.
The truth is, the brain adapts, societal norms adapt, and we develop new frameworks for navigating these spaces. Yes, we need better digital hygiene. Yes, we must educate the youth on the psychology of online deception and the disinhibition effect. But retreating from the network or viewing the global standardization of language as a cultural tragedy, it just ignores the incredible resilience of human communication.
Resilience shouldn't be an excuse for accepting a toxic environment. Pointing out that we survived the television doesn't automatically validate the smartphone.
It shows a pattern of successful adaptation.
The television didn't follow you into your bed, track your eye movements, analyze your psychological vulnerabilities, and feed you personalized stimuli to keep you awake. The scale, intimacy, and aggressive design of mobile technology are fundamentally unprecedented.
They are more advanced, yes.
We are not just adapting to a new tool, we are physically altering the neurodevelopment of our youth to accommodate a commercial ecosystem. And we are doing it while simultaneously stripping away the diverse linguistic frameworks that might offer alternative ways of thinking about these very problems.
We cannot view this solely through the lens of vulnerability. We have to look at agency. The individual has agency in how they deploy these tools.
Agency is an illusion when you're fighting a supercomputer aimed at your brainstem. You cannot expect a teenager to exercise pure rational agency against a multi-billion-dollar industry designed to addict them. This is the core structural downside that gets masked by your rhetoric of global opportunity.
But that rhetoric of global opportunity is not empty. It is a measurable, empirical reality. Let's look at the actual mechanics of the global workforce today.
Okay.
Remote work, cross-border collaboration, decentralized finance, none of these operate without the dual pillars of mobile connectivity and a shared English protocol.
Sure. They are the gears of that specific machine.
If you want to talk about structural realities, the most defining structural reality of our time is that talent is distributed equally around the world, but opportunity historically was not. Mobile technology and English bridge that gap. A software developer in a rural village can now contribute code to an international open-source project, get paid, and elevate their community's economic standing. That is not a hypothetical. It is happening millions of times a day.
I don't deny the economic utility for those who successfully navigate the gauntlet. But at what societal cost?
The cost of progress is always disruption.
Disruption is a very sanitized word for it. For every developer who leverages the system perfectly, how many young minds are severely compromised by digital dependency? How many local communities are hollowed out because the smartest individuals are entirely focused on a digital, Anglo-centric global market rather than solving the physical, immediate problems of their own geography?
They can do both.
But they often don't. The hyper-focus on digital, global mobility fundamentally disconnects people from their immediate physical reality. We are creating a society that is omnipresent digitally but completely absent physically.
That implies physical proximity is the only valid form of community, which is exactly the rigid geographical mindset this technology liberated us from.
It's not the only form, but it's the foundational one.
Community is about shared values and shared goals, not just shared zip codes. The spread of mobile phones allows communities of interest to thrive. If you suffer from a rare medical condition, your physical neighbors might not understand it, but you can find this support network globally.
That is a very specific, positive use case.
But it applies broadly. If you have a highly specialized intellectual interest, you can find your peers. The ability to abstract our relationships away from pure physical geography is a profound evolutionary advantage.
It is an advantage only if the relationships formed in that abstract space are genuine. But as we discussed, the architecture of that space encourages anonymity, deception, and superficiality.
It doesn't force you to be superficial.
It incentivizes it. You are substituting the high-friction, high-trust environment of physical community with a low-friction, low-trust digital alternative. And because the digital alternative is easier, less commanding, and highly gamified, it inevitably outcompetes the physical one.
People still meet up.
Less and less. We see this in the data on youth socialization. Fewer physical meetups, less time spent in unstructured physical play, and skyrocketing rates of reported loneliness and anxiety. And this is despite being the most digitally connected generation in history. The paradox of this era is that the very tools designed to satisfy our drive for connection are the precise instruments of our unprecedented isolation.
It is a striking paradox, I'll give you that. And frankly, it perfectly encapsulates the immense complexity of what we are analyzing today. The landscape of human interaction has been irrevocably altered.
Utterly transformed.
From my perspective, the integration of mobile technology and the widespread adoption of English serve as the great equalizers of our time. They are the infrastructure that scales human curiosity. They allow us to forge global communities of shared interest and democratize access to economic and intellectual opportunities that geography previously denied us.
Right.
They are not without risk, as you've pointed out, but they are the essential tools for a cooperative, advanced global society.
And my position remains that we cannot let the dazzling utility of these tools blind us to their catastrophic structural impacts. The cost of this so-called equalization is a homogenization of thought, a severe digital dependency that is literally rewiring the cognitive development of our youth, and the creation of a precarious social landscape built on anonymity and deception.
We certainly disagree on the net outcome.
Depth for speed, authenticity for scale, and cultural richness for corporate efficiency.
Well, what is undeniably clear to both of us is that these forces are permanently entrenched in our reality. The smartphone and the global digital network are not retreating, and the utility of a shared global language will only compound as the world becomes more interconnected.
Yes, the infrastructure is here to stay. That much is obvious. The imperative now is entirely about awareness and mitigation. We have to recognize the architecture of the cage if we ever want to control how we move within it.
Exactly. It requires a profound, deliberate engagement from all of us. We have to balance the incredible power of immediate global access with the deeply necessary discipline of digital hygiene and cognitive preservation.
Absolutely.
The platforms you use and the language you speak shape the way you perceive the world. The borders on the map may have been erased, but the boundaries we set for our own minds have never been more critical.